All right, that is our second bell. Everybody please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, everybody please remain standing and welcome Paula Pennebaker, retired president and CEO of the YWCA of Southeastern Wisconsin, to the podium to give our invocation.
Good afternoon. You may have heard the expression, cleanliness is next to godliness. Today we're going to hear how we can keep those words of wisdom in our minds. Soon there'll be an efficient, really cool way to make laundry exciting by use of a combo washer-dryer machine. Having folded a load of clean clothes last night, the idea of having everything completed in one machine excited me. We are fortunate to have such a well-rounded professional as today's speaker, Glenn Reid, CEO of Marathon Machines. While we listen to him, let's think about all the people who may not ever have an opportunity to experience the use of this great new science marvel. We are a fortunate crowd and should always remember that. Enjoy Glenn's talk. Thank you.
Thank you, Paula. And I'd also like to thank all of our sponsors whose logos appeared on the screen before the presentation. I'd also like to highlight one of our newest sponsors, Strang Incorporated, represented here in Rotary by Matt Matson. Strang is an award-winning integrated architecture, engineering, interior design, and planning firm that uses an inclusive approach to provide exceptional design for the most unique and challenging projects. Now, we're going to play a quick video highlighting Strang and their partnership with Rotary.
There are several reasons why it's appropriate and meaningful for us to be a part of Rotary. Rotary's values align very nicely with Strang's values and culture. When you look at the four-way test and you think about those questions, those are questions that align with Strang culture.
Strang is an integrated design firm. We have in-house services, including architecture, engineering, interiors, a lot of specialty services. Our culture is probably defined by what we call design synchronicity. And design synchronicity is really the way we work together as a team with all these resources under one roof. That's a collaborative design culture.
Because Rotary is based on relationships, and really that's the foundation of the organization. The same is true here at Strang as well. It's about the relationship that we have, not only with each other, but also with our potential clients and our existing clients. And that's certainly a value that Rotary has, and one that we also align very closely with.
You know, community involvement is part of our culture, and being part of Rotary allows us to connect with business leaders in the community, and they're doing a lot of good work on their own, but it's just being part of that conversation and getting to know the people, you know, that are doing great things in the community. Rotary is just a very consistent way of maintaining that connection.
And now more than ever, it's important for us to support our service organizations, and particularly those service organizations that are part of the fabric of our communities. Communities need leaders, they need leadership, and we need people who are willing to roll up their sleeves, not only just write a check, but also roll up their sleeves and do the work of the community. And Rotary certainly has done that. That's the impression of the brand that I see of Rotary. It's a very strong brand. It's a brand that's been around for 100 years, right? And so it's something that I think has been embraced by American culture.
Thank you. We'd like to welcome the virtual audience. Thank you to all you members who are here today joining us. We'd also like to recognize and thank our guests for joining us today. When I call your name, please stand so you can be recognized. We have Tiffany Pentengill from Atlas Milwaukee, Lauren Fester from Professional Dimensions, Joe Wabashewski from Marathon Machines. We also have Erica Lewandowski and Emma Fitch from Marathon Machines as well. Larry Hitchcock from Social Leads. Joe Cranley is here with Glenn Reid. We have Millie Kobe from Employ Milwaukee and Mark Dotry from MSOE. So thank you everybody for joining us today. Welcome. In a few minutes, we'll hear from Glenn Reid, CEO of Marathon Machines. But before we get that, we've got a couple quick announcements. The first announcement is something we've been excited about and has been a long time, almost 2 years in the planning stages. Innovation comes in many forms, and it's really driven by listening to our customers or our membership base. Our workplaces have continued to evolve, and many of our members had suggested that they may find it easier to attend or be more active in Rotary with a breakfast meeting as opposed to our lunch meeting, which has been our tradition, and it truly has been our tradition. Rotary Club of Milwaukee has been meeting at lunch since 1913. If you do the math on that, that's over 5,000 lunch meetings. So here's what I have to tell you. Tuesday, October 5th, Rotary is gonna pilot our first breakfast program. It will take place here in Memorial Hall, where we are today. First Tuesday of every month for at least the next 6 months, we're gonna try the first Tuesday of every month, a breakfast meeting here in Rotary Hall. Give everybody a little more flexibility in their days and in their schedules and see how it goes. So the breakfast buffet will open at 7:30. The program will start at 8. And before 9 o'clock, we will have everybody out of here on their way. To encourage everybody to come, we have another great guest. Peter Fagan, president of the Milwaukee Bucks, will be here on October 5th to talk to all of us about our world champion Bucks and what they're working on. So please mark it down on your calendars. October 5th, breakfast meeting here in Memorial Hall. Couple more announcements. The next Rotary Social will take place on Wednesday, September 15th. We are going to go back to the Milwaukee Yacht Club. For those of you who were able to make it last time, we had a great evening, a great event out there at the bar. So we've decided to do it again, enjoy the waning days of summer. So Wednesday, September 15th, 5 p.m., we will be at the Milwaukee Rotary, the Milwaukee Yacht Club for our next Rotary Social. Also, this Saturday, those of you available, please join us at the garden at St. Anne Center for Intergenerational Care. Bring your friends, bring your children, bring your families. We will harvest a variety of fruits and vegetables from the raised garden beds. Then we'll move into the kitchen, make jam, and prepare food for freezing and pickling. It's a good time, a good chance to meet other Rotarians and to really help the community. So thank you to the Done in a Day Chair, Tom Sattler, Senior Vice President at Equitable Bank, and to Sister Edna Lonergan for arranging this chance to connect, meet fellow Rotarians, and make a real difference in our community. Please sign up at the registration table. There will be emails you can respond to signing up, or you can just talk to Mary or Aaron after the program at the registration table. Thank you to the 70 or so Rotarians so far who have signed up for Like-Minded. Here in the Rotary office, I know we've been catching up on a couple things this week. The connections will go out this week, the contacts that come out of Like-Minded. So please watch for those this week. If you have questions, please talk to Mary, and we can answer everything we can for you. And now we're going to welcome Paula back up to the podium to talk about our latest Rotary book read.
Thanks, President Todd. The Understanding Structural Racism Committee will hold our third book discussion on the book entitled The Sum of Us, What Racism Costs to Everyone and How We Can Prosper Together. It was written by Heather McGee, an expert in economic and social policy. She has drafted legislation, testified before Congress, and contributed regularly to news shows such as Meet the Press. She holds a BA in American Studies from Yale and a JD from UC Berkeley School of Law. Starting on Thursday, September 30th, there will be 3 sessions, each an hour and a half in length, from 4 to 5:30. The other dates are October 14th and October 28th. They will be held via Zoom, and I encourage as many of you as possible to participate. If you'd like to invest 5 minutes of your time, you can see Heather on YouTube in a CBS This Morning clip. The link is in today's connecting email update. Call or send a message to Aaron to sign up by September 23rd. He will need to get the Zoom information and discussion questions to you ahead of the first session. We hope to see you online. Thanks.
Paula, thank you again. One final reminder for everybody. Please grab one of the parking vouchers in the middle of the tables. Put it in your pocket now so you don't forget it on the way out the door as you're leaving. You know, that is your exit ticket along with the ticket you received when you came in. So with that being said, please welcome Richie Burke, President of Go Get It Marketing and Media, to introduce our speaker.
Good afternoon. It's good seeing everyone. I am excited to introduce today's guest, Glenn Reid, who is relatively new to the Milwaukee business community, who I think we're very fortunate to have here. For those of you who don't know Glenn, he is the founder and CEO of Marathon Machines. They are disrupting the washer and dryer space with essentially an all-in-one washer dryer with modern technology. He was named the Tesla of appliances by Wired magazine. He recently relatively recently moved the company's headquarters from Silicon Valley to Menomonee Valley here in Milwaukee back in 2019. Glenn created the legendary iMovie 1.0 with a team of 3 at Apple in '98 and built iPhoto and managed both products through 4 releases and tens of millions of users. And he spent hundreds of hours designing products with Steve Jobs, both at Apple and Next. He was one of the first 25 employees at Adobe, and he's also founded several startup companies, including Five Across, which was acquired by Cisco back in 2007. And I got to have Glenn on my podcast. We did a couple episodes back in February, and he also has some very interesting takes on the risk tolerance or averseness of us Midwesterners, as well as a surprising take on the weather here in Milwaukee. So, Glenn, thanks for joining us today.
Great to be here. Thanks for welcoming me to the Rotary Club of Milwaukee. What am I doing here is my first slide, and that's both serious and not. I thought this was for grown-ups. I don't really feel like one. But honestly, part of the reason I'm here is because I'm the weird guy from California that everybody literally asks me, what are you doing here? You know, we all want to go to California. Why did you come to Milwaukee? And there are lots of great reasons for that. But I've become a little bit of a cultural ambassador between Silicon Valley and Milwaukee. I explained to people in California why you shouldn't just fly over the Midwest. You should actually land there and check it out. It's a great place. And I explained to people in Milwaukee why not everybody is great in California, although most of them are. So my talk is going to be somewhat irreverent and somewhat unusual. You get people like the president of Milwaukee Bucks. It's going to be a little different than whatever he's going to say. I titled this A Californian in Milwaukee because that's what I am. So in the guidelines for presenting to the Rotary presentations, it says don't just reuse an old presentation and don't say that you're recycling a presentation and speak for only 20-25 minutes. I'm going to recycle part of an old presentation. I just thought I should get that out of the way. So, my career in a nutshell, I worked for 2 multi-billion-dollar companies and a lot of little startups. And then I moved my company to Milwaukee 2 years ago because it's a perfect place for a manufacturing high-tech business. They don't like big, heavy manufacturable stuff in Silicon Valley. And here, there's a history of manufacturing, obviously, and as we're trying to sort of infuse it with technology. So bringing technology with me in my back pocket. I love it here. I'm a CEO, but I have like a hammer loop on my pants, and I was getting pretty dirty in the shop the day before I came here. I'm sorry I don't have a suit and tie on, but I never wear one, so it's authentic. My first startup was Adobe Systems in 1985. There were only 25 people there, and it's a multi-billion-dollar company now. Steve Jobs came to Adobe and said, "Hey, you guys make laser printers. How about Apple makes one and we go do that?" And it turned into desktop publishing, and it turned into one of the biggest things ever. I was there and part of it. I didn't meet Steve Jobs at the time, but Adobe wouldn't have happened the way it did without Steve, and vice versa. So when I left Adobe, I went to work at Next, which was his company. I literally just sent him an email and said, "You don't know who I am, but I want to work for you, and I'm awesome," and got hired. So I went to Next, did a bunch of other stuff, ended up at Apple. Somewhere in there, I had a baby, got married, stuff like that. Apple was a struggling company, and I call it the biggest corporate turnaround of all time. We were almost out of business. Next bought them for negative $400 million. Steve Jobs came back and introduced this product, and my contributions were the video app that ran on this computer. They snuck me in the back door, secret project kind of thing. And it was, up until recently, the most valuable company in the history of the world. So they definitely turned it around. And I have a little bit of imposter syndrome, like coming and talking to a room full of business leaders in Milwaukee. But I realized, I had a front row seat to this amazing journey that Apple went through, and it's definitely part of who I am now. I'm one of the only known recipients of a medal from Steve Jobs, which I have in my bag if anybody doesn't believe me. So that's a long story too. So one of the things that comes up a lot in my conversations with Milwaukee people, and part of what I say is I want to meet everybody in Milwaukee, so I literally want to meet all of you individually if possible. But a lot of people talk about the Tech Hub, the Tech Initiative, and I get in that conversation a lot. So it's part of what is informing my journey here in Milwaukee. And people sort of say, how do we make it into a tech hub? How do we succeed? How do we become more like Silicon Valley? My sort of standard answer has become, you have everything you need. Smart people, money, ambition, good ideas, all that stuff is here, maybe except one thing, which is an appetite for risk. And it's not unique to Milwaukee. There's sort of to some extent, everywhere outside of Silicon Valley is just different. But the Midwest is risk averse. It just sort of is. So what does that mean? And so what exactly is risk? This is the part where I recycle part of an old presentation. Risk isn't just one great big thing, like that's risky, which is how most people use it. Like, well, how is it risky exactly? Is it anything in the future is risky? Yeah. It's just something that's unproven, an idea that hasn't been tested. Yeah, that's risky. Something maybe just too different from what you're doing now. A change of path can be risky, even if it's not inherently risky. If you go from, what's a good example? I don't know, big companies that get into just a whole new product line that they aren't a market leader in, that's a risky thing to do. Sometimes just fear of failure. I just don't want to fail. That's why this feels risky to me. Or the potential to lose something, lose some money or time or status. What I focus on is that it's about loss. If you don't have anything to lose, then there's no risk. And it sounds simple, but it truly is as simple as that for my definition of what risk is. And this is a cliche. What do you have to lose? But if you take it more literally, what do you actually have to lose? And I've learned that this is a much more serious question than it sounds like. Could you lose your life? That's a risky, thing to do if you're literally your life is at risk, like crossing the street in New York City, or your marriage or money or status. Like these are the things that we typically are worried about losing. There's a little side journey here. Kids in California in fourth grade have to study the gold rush and all that stuff because it's one of the only historical things in California. So, in the Oregon Trail, there's a board game from back a million years ago called Oregon Trail, and you sort of, you bring along gunpowder and horses and wagons, and you roll the dice and see what happens to you. And when my daughter was in fourth grade, I was like, just bring a lot of gunpowder. You can get whatever else you need, What I didn't anticipate was the card that turned up, you died of cholera. And you can't get out of that with gunpowder. So about 20,000 people die every year of cholera. This was recycled, so I didn't know about COVID when I built this, but cholera is a thing. It's a weird thing, and you died of it back in the Oregon Trail days. And it's sort of about sanitation. And yeah, you can lose your life, through a disease or a car accident, but no one thinks of risk exactly in those terms. I looked up the transportation risk. This astonished me. Deaths per 1 billion passenger miles. Motorcycles very much at the top of the list. Wisconsin's a no helmet state. Harley Davidson's an amazing company. I rode a Harley for 10 years without a helmet. I guess it was risky, but I like to go slow. So, but things like your company doing poorly isn't really on the list. So I think most people equate risk with failure, which to me is a very different thing. Failure is sort of you didn't achieve your goals, or someone says, no, you can't do that, and you have to stop, which does happen sometimes, partnerships that don't work. Mostly it's just you give up. Not failing is not giving up. They're very synonymous. Sometimes you have to change what you're doing, but most things, when you're failing, you're just literally giving up. But risk is not the same as failure. It's proportional to loss, as I said. So I think that most business risk, if you put it back on the business community, really is personal risk in disguise. If you're the CEO of a company and you're using somebody else's money and you have a golden parachute cord in one hand, are you really, taking a business risk for the company? What have you got to lose? Nothing, except maybe your job, or somebody blames you, or you're embarrassed, or you just don't want to bring attention to yourself. Like, these probably feel familiar to everybody as things you worry about when you're making a decision, especially in the work context. Like, am I going to be the person who made the idiotic idea to get into the washing machine business? But if you go back to, is my life at risk? Is money at risk? If you really don't have anything to lose except face, as they put it in Japan, then maybe that's not so risky. You just go do it, And I think that, like I said, I think business risk is often just personal risk in disguise. And I think when we all make decisions for our companies and you think, should we or shouldn't we get into that new business? Should we outsource this or do it ourselves, or all the decisions you make? There is some financial risk for the company, obviously. But if you really boil it down, it's like you just want to keep your job and you want people to approve of you. And this is a roundabout way to get to this sort of point, but I think what I've seen as an overarching sort of explanation for all this stuff is what I think of as the approval culture. So if you're in Silicon Valley and you have the worst idea ever, and believe me, there are lots of terrible ideas, everyone around you starts cheering you to go, dude, that's a great idea. Everyone approves of doing foolish things. And here, I feel everyone's looking around to see who's going to disapprove of them. Like, I don't know, dude, that doesn't seem like such a good idea. And, what would your mother think? Or, it really is in the back of our minds a lot. And if you don't worry about what somebody thinks about you, then doesn't feel risky. So it's not all those things of losing face and losing sort of embarrassment. That goes back to approval or disapproval, which sounds kind of bizarre when I say it out loud, but I've seen it and I believe it. And it's not a coincidence that, excuse me, some of the most successful people I've ever known, Steve Jobs, the leaders of Adobe, Larry Ellison, Elon Musk, they're practically sociopaths. They don't care what anybody thinks about them. They go to a Rotary Club presentation with dirty pants and a ponytail or whatever. They just don't care. So, I was able to stand up here and say this stuff because I don't need your approval. I'm okay either way. I want your approval, obviously, but it's an amazing freedom to not really care and not feel personally at risk. Like, you do it, doesn't work out, I'll go do something else. And I believe I'm the only human being who quit my job working for Steve Jobs 3 different times. He was a fairly known abrasive personality, shall we say, and usually didn't even get a chance to quit. He'd just fire you. But the first time I left, he was like, "Oh, you can come back if you want." That's kind of what he said. And then they went and found me. Second time was political. There was a bunch of stuff going on inside of Apple as big companies, vice presidents and stuff. And I was just fed up with it. I was like, you know what? I'm out of here. And I dropped my badge on the table and I just left. I'm like, I can get another job. This is not fun and this is wrong. Like, you guys are operating in slimy ways, basically. And they were sort of astonished. And I went and worked for a friend of mine for half a year. And Steve sent one of his close lieutenants, a guy named Sima Tamadone, who is one of our investors, I'm happy to say, a good friend of mine. Like, go find Glenn and get him back, and I was not coming back. I'm like, no, I left on purpose. I don't want to work there. It's a snake pit. Get out of here. And he's like, no, but Steve really wants you to come back. And I was like, nope, I'm not coming back. But they literally doubled my salary and gave me a $100,000 signing bonus to come back. I'm like, okay, you got me. And so that's when I built. The reason I left, I built iMovie. We bought iDVD. We're sort of forming this media hub. I was like, I want to do music and photos too. So I started working on photos, and I put a big proposal to do music. And they just kind of looked at me funny, and they acquired a company that did music that became iTunes, and they forgot to tell me. And I was like, and the guy who got acquired, I ran into him in the hallway. I'm like, what are you doing here? He's like, I work here. I'm like, well, who do you report to? And he's like, Sina. I'm like, that's weird. He didn't tell me. I'm like, what are you working on? He said, I can't tell you, but I kind of knew. And that's when I was like, well, that's bogus. Like, that was my idea. I wrote this big proposal, just about to start working on it, and I ran into you in the hallway, so I quit. And that's a form of, I don't care, and I can go do something else, and I can come back and do it again. And it's not everybody gets away with that. Honestly, it was a lucky time in history, but it's kind of my message to anybody who worries about what other people are thinking and taking risks and growing your business and like turning Milwaukee into that Silicon Valley-like place. A lot of it is just the mindset of, approving of other people doing stupid stuff yourself, having a backup plan, being like Aaron Rodgers or Brett Favre. There's always a backup plan. There's always somebody open, or you get sacked. Like, it's sort of the same mentality. Like, you don't know what's going to happen. You have a vague plan, but you just get out there and go after it. So the thing I said on Richie's podcast, that I said, don't say that, because I'm going to say it in my presentation, but people in Wisconsin have a lot of risk-taking ability. It just takes a different form. You go up north and everyone sort of laughs, but that's actually sort of a risky thing to do, is drive your pickup out on the lake to see if it's frozen or not. So I admire that, and I was like, just bring that kind of mindset into the boardroom and, like, hold my beer, watch this. And the guy who's driving that truck, his friends were cheering him on and, holding his beer, maybe drinking a little bit of it. But who approves of doing that? and doesn't approve of, throwing some budget at a new initiative at your company. So that's what I have for you. It's a short and long presentation at the same time, but just a way of looking at it, which I feel I'm bringing with me from California. Like, what do you got to lose? Go do it. Whatever it is you're thinking about doing, go do it. I'll approve of it, whatever it is. So that's all I got. Let me know if you have questions or criticism. My current thing, when did that start? So my current thing is combining washers and dryers into one, which should have been done a long time ago. You don't have a dishwasher and a dish dryer, just how it should be. I had the idea 7 years ago. It took me 2 or 3 years to decide to do it at all. I thought somebody should do that. That's a good idea. And I guess it's going to have to be me. So I didn't know anything about it, just kind of got into it and figured it out. At first it was in the garage, and I'm the CEO because I started the company. Nobody can tell me I can't be until my board kicks me out, which I'm sure is soon. But it's been about 3 real years, 2 years of kind of warming up and deciding it's okay to compete with Whirlpool in their own backyard. So we have a technological advantage that I'm a great programmer, and all hardware is controlled by computers nowadays. So it's a good place to be coming from to do amazing stuff with appliances, and making stuff smart just makes sense. You put a brain in a photocopier and you get desktop publishing. You put a brain in a car and you get self-driving cars. So you put a brain in a washing machine, you pretty much just get clean laundry like before, but it's better. What else? Or who else, I guess?
Two quick questions. One is, I was looking at your website and it said that your market is currently in California. Are you manufacturing them here?
Is that both questions or is that one?
That's the first question. The second one is...
Hold the second one because I can't remember them. First question is it true we're only selling them in California, and are we manufacturing them here? So yes, we're manufacturing right down West St. Paul across from Sobelman's in a big old factory down there with bad electricity and even worse plumbing. But we had an existing relationship with a distributor in San Francisco, so we decided to start with them and build out the West Coast just because we know them well, and it's how we'll just learn, get the kinks out of it, but this will be our second territory, pretty close behind that, and then everywhere else after that. Is the semiconductor shortage impacting business? Yes, and I can't believe how many supply chain things are messed up right now. Lumber, like, really? And sheet metal. Semiconductors, we have a circuit board and we thought we'd just make a small change to it, and 5 times now in the last couple months we submit an order and it comes back, these 5 parts are not available, and we substitute them, and 2 days later those parts aren't available, and we go around and round and round. I've been hearing that companies who can, like Milwaukee Tool was mentioned, they're just buying all the parts because they were worried about the same thing. So, they're available at noon. There's 400 of them on DigiKey, and by 4 p.m. they're all gone. So maybe we'll buy them from Milwaukee Tool. I don't know, but it's definitely a thing, and it's kind of scary because you want to be able to deliver your product in a predictable way. So I'm just kind of hoping it all goes away because it feels temporary to me, but I don't know how we solve that exactly.
I agree with your view of risk. I'm curious, what's the biggest failure you've experienced, and what did you learn from it?
She agrees with my assessment of risk and what's my biggest failure and what did I learn from it. I'm instructed to repeat all the questions just in case you're wondering. Oh, you guys do this every Tuesday, so you know. I don't remember failures sort of deliberately. It's sort of like, just the rearview mirror so you don't see it anymore. There have been lots of them, and it sort of depends on how you define it, but usually they're rolling failures. I don't do one great big thing and keep it secret until the very end, so it's a huge thing. I tell people what I'm doing. I'm not worried about people stealing the idea, so they talk about failing quickly. That's me. And let me see if I can think of, here's an example. I started a company 10, 12 years ago to store electrical energy for grid level storage, which I also knew nothing about. But the idea was just to lift heavy stuff up in the air and then let go of it when you wanted the electricity back. It's a pretty simple idea, but nobody's doing it. So I dove into that head first. And in learning about it, discovered that it's a highly regulated industry. It's hard for startups to participate. Grid level stuff is just messy, and we failed epically and went and did something else. But 90% of all electrical storage is actually pumped hydro, which is basically pumping water uphill and then letting it come back down. So it still seems like a good idea to me, but you can have that idea if you want. Question in the back. In our factory, how many units can we produce a year? We still are working on that. We haven't shipped any yet, so 0 might be the obvious answer, but we think we can make 10 to 20,000 depending on how good we get at the process. We're actually not making them from scratch. We're retrofitting washing machines that we buy, and then we kind of like Tesla started with a Lotus Roadster and they stuck their motor into it. So we take a washing machine from Alliance Laundry Systems up in Ripon, actually, a nice Speed Queen machine, and we take their circuit board off and throw it away and put ours on, and we have a retrofit process. So we can make one about every 15 minutes with sort of manual labor, hand tools, not much automation. So hopefully we can ramp that up. Or maybe somebody else will do it for us when we get to a certain level of scale. If you want a job assembling stuff, see me afterwards. We're looking for some people. Try and see if I can repeat that question. Is the tech hub about people or repeat the second half of that? Is it the people or the businesses? I didn't really come here because of the tech hub. I didn't even know that was a thing. I came here because the real estate's cheap and it's a great place to be in for a bunch of other reasons. I discovered the tech hub initiative after getting here. I think it's about people. When I talk to the Kathy Hendricks and some of the people running that initiative, I can't get people to stay in the state when they graduate from Marquette or UWM. They just go to California or some crazy thing. So retaining talent and growing the number of places that you can work. So trying to get people to move here from California because there's great opportunities. So I think it's mostly about people. There's a lot of great technology here already. Rockwell and Johnson Controls and lots of university talent. So I would say it's about the labor force. Yes? What process do you use to evaluate ideas? How do we evaluate ideas to determine if they're economically viable? That's a great question. The best approach is to sell them and find out that people want to buy them that way. So if you work backwards from that, selling something that doesn't quite exist yet, a great 3D rendering, give it a name, give it a price point, try and sell it to your friends. Like if you can't get somebody excited about a product that is perfect because it doesn't exist and doesn't have any problems yet, then you probably won't be able to sell it after you finish making it. So the sooner you find out, the better. And sometimes just explaining it to people like, hey, we're combining washers and dryers, and literally everybody's like, what? That sounds great. I want one of those. So most people make the mistake of keeping their idea secret and working on it until it's done, and then they find out nobody wants it. Then you've lost a lot of time and effort. So at the root of that is maybe somebody's going to steal my idea if I tell you about it. I've been doing this stuff a long time. I think I've shipped 32 products in my career, some other people's products, some of my own. At Adobe and Apple, I can remember people like, we should, steal that idea. But nobody has $10 million and 20 people sitting around with nothing to do to go steal somebody else's idea. And plus, if it's an untested idea, they don't want to steal it from you. They want to wait, like you go first, and we'll steal it from you later if it works. So an untested idea is never stolen by anybody. Even if they think they're going to, they get back to their shop in their office and everyone talks them out of it. Like, what are you, crazy? So I literally just sell it verbally. The more seriously you sell it, take Elon Musk as an example. He makes a fake truck, or even Detroit does this too, make a concept car and put a price tag on it and see how many people want one and pre-orders, and then they go build it if there's actually demand for it. So I think applying your own sense, like one of the mistakes product people make is building products for themselves. Like, I want this is awesome, therefore everybody else will want one too. It's almost never true in my experience. Unless you're Steve Jobs, his thing was, I want this, I think this is awesome, I'm gonna make sure everybody else wants it too, and just tell them they should want it, and it seemed to work for him. I don't know if that's a good answer to your question or not. You were waiting before. If I can paraphrase that, you read that we need high-risk people and, oh, ultra-rich. I don't know how to answer that exactly. I think the Rockefellers and the railroad barons sort of believe that for capitalism to work correctly, you have to put the money back in, you can't just keep it. So philanthropy is one way, starting things is another way. Funding and risk-taking and new ideas are all sort of mixed in the same pot. A lot of people have ideas and no money, they can't get anything. Although software, all you need is a laptop and you can get going, which is why there's so many software companies. I think you need people with big visions of the future at some basic level, whether it's, hyperloop transportation systems, or, somebody's got to be thinking big, and you need follow through. Somebody's got to stay with it long enough for it to really happen. And I'm not sure quite what it said in that article you read, but I guess Steve Jobs, to bring him into it again, because I spent a lot of time with the guy. He gets all this praise retroactively for being, creative and innovative, which he actually wasn't. He kind of took other people's ideas and put them together in interesting ways, like a cell phone and a touch screen. That was a phone with a touch screen was not, neither one of those was a new idea, but putting them together was kind of new. What he was good at was marketing, just making people want stuff. But he also failed at that for a long time until he came back to Apple. When they launched the iMac, they put a $300 million ad campaign behind that and hired Jeff Goldblum, did TV ads for my iMovie app. Like, he just poured a lot of money on it, and that makes almost anything successful. I think Apple was a fashion brand, not a computer company. Like, they were the first one to quit selling legroom and gigahertz and all the fact-based things, and it was a lifestyle. This is the kind of person you're going to be if you buy a Mac, and they would unveil their spring collection to great acclaim, and it was always secret. That's what Yves Saint Laurent does, here's our spring collection. So they weren't that much better of computers or products. It was just a lifestyle sale, like, the BMW kind of a thing. And early on, they didn't even have as much market share as BMW, but they had a lot of press. So that was a bit of a non-answer perhaps, but that's what I got.
Well, in Milwaukee, we
I missed the beginning of that question.
Yeah, the lack of venture capital for startups.
The lack of venture capitals for startup. And yeah, what I see overall is it's a very fractured landscape. There's a lot of small funds. There's a lot of little startup coalitions. There are just too many little ones and not enough big ones. And when you're raising money, you need, growth capital. There isn't enough money to really raise $20 million in Wisconsin, maybe not even in Chicago. If you want $2 million, it's pretty easy. But, in some of these huge funds in Silicon Valley, they won't invest less than $100 million, and they want to invest in these late stage companies. So there's sort of a tiered system. But I think if you started out with $2 million and grew quickly, you might have to go outside the area to get a bigger round of funding. Roughly speaking, $100 million fund, you want to make 10 investments, you want to have some follow-on capital. So you maybe only invest in 10 companies or whatever, but roughly 1/10. So you might invest $10 million 10 times to get to your $100 million. A $10 million fund, you're making 10 $1 million bets. So there is definitely an issue of scale there. And I think Wisconsin maybe, I don't know how you do this, but roll up some of the smaller funds into bigger funds. Or I know there's a $100 million fund being proposed and batted around in the legislature. I'm in favor of it. It's risky to invest in companies, but it's risky not to also.
In addition to capital, two ingredients of entrepreneurship are culture and education. DNA of how are we doing on culture and education? Where do you see us in Milwaukee 10 years from now? Culture and education.
Do you mean the culture of VCs in particular?
Risk taking and on the edge of you said that we're losing our talent. Yeah. But we also have locally grown talent. Where are we 10 years from now, given our education system and the culture that needs to move ahead? Risk taking.
I feel like I should be running for mayor with a question like that. A very broad question. To paraphrase, with venture capitalists and entrepreneurs and people like on risk appetite, what does it look like 10 years from now? Is that a reasonable paraphrase? It looks a lot the same as it does today, unless something changes in the mindset, honestly, and that's why I bring up risk profile. Like, just think about it very differently. Because it goes all the way down and up the chain. If a venture capitalist feels maybe conservative about risking on certain kinds of things, then the people who are growing those companies go somewhere else. And there is definitely a top to bottom ecosystem that needs to be present. I mentioned, there's plenty of money in the state of Wisconsin. A lot of it is family funds and some VC funds. There are not enough things to invest in. I think the deal flow is pretty low. And part of that is people are looking outside the area. The talent is a harder thing. I think that the boat has to get a lot of water under it for that to. And one person put it to me like, a recruiter friend of mine, like let's say you move to Milwaukee to work at a startup and the startup fails, so you're sort of thinking that through ahead of time. Well, who else could I work for in Milwaukee? And you look at the landscape. They're mostly 100-year-old companies here and very successful ones, but there are not so many mid-tier or startup kinds of companies. So it's sort of you walk down the street in San Francisco and they're everywhere and you recognize the names of half of them and you sort of feel like, oh, if this doesn't work out, I'll go work for these guys or those guys or those guys. So it's a collective effort, I think, and I don't really know how to solve it, but I think the fact that we're having this conversation and a lot of people around Milwaukee are having this conversation, the will is obviously there to do something about it, and I'll help if I can. I saw another hand somewhere. We are out of time. I think it's that hand. Well, thanks, you guys.
Thank you, Glenn. We appreciate you coming in and honors in honor of leaders like you coming to speak to our club, we're going to make a donation in your name to the YWCA of Southeastern Wisconsin, whose mission is eliminating racism, empowering women, and promoting peace, justice, freedom, and dignity for all. Please join us next week. We will be rejoined by Chris Kalenda, fellow Rotarian and former senior advisor on Afghanistan and Pakistan, who will address, some of the events going on right now in Kabul, a very timely presentation. Few quick last reminders. Sign up to pitch in at St. Anne's. I know we're really looking to get a count of number of people who are going to show up, so feel free to sign up at the table, contact the Rotary office, or sign up through the emails that will be going out. Consider donating a good bottle of whiskey or another item to the RCM Scholarship Golf Classic silent auction that is taking place September 13th. Also consider bidding on a pair of the PGA tickets for next May in Tulsa. And lastly, mark your calendar for the social at the Yacht Club, Wednesday, September, it changed, 13th, I believe. And most importantly, October 5th, please remember that's a breakfast meeting here in Memorial Hall. So with that being said, thank you everybody for joining us. Let's go out and do some good in the world.